Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Planning and Heritage Committee meeting, May 7th, 3:30. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do we have any declarations of conflicts today? None. So can I get an approval of the agenda? Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Beck. All those in favor? Oh, great. Thank you for that. Now, just before I ask for an adoption of the minutes, I just wanted to just point out that we just had a typo in there where it said that I had been chairing the meeting, but actually I was in Australia and it was actually Councillor McCabe. So it's really just a housekeeping thing. But so if I can get an approval, an adoption of the minutes subject to that change. Okay, moved by His Worship and seconded by Councillor McCabe. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. And any business arising from the minutes?
Page 5.
Yes.
Again, Madam Chair, this is about the update on the commitments made by the province as part of the major variance application related to 15 Park Street. I did a site visit of the facility last week with a first-year medical student from MUN, Grant Walters, and Roxanne Carter-Thompson was part of the site visit. She did the tour along with John Arell, and they were trying to gauge where we are with this Park Street issue and the variance and the path forward. And we did have the discussion about creating this joint task force made up of provincial and municipal partners, including stakeholders, that is, i.e., residents who live in the neighborhood. So is there any update on that, or can I just leave it with the department and get their they can give me their feedback? And the other issue is under STRs. Watched the national news last night, and apparently St. John's, Newfoundland is going through some STR regulations, but I don't think as aggressive as Charlottetown's STRs. But it's about the insurance issue. Could I just leave it with the department? Do we require contractors, builders, owners of duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, multi-unit apartment buildings, do we require them, the owners, to have insurance, a liability insurance on their units, like we are with STRs? I just want to see if there's an example or a comparison.
So I can leave it with the department to come back with that, but I can speak to that when you own a duplex or you have a garden suite and you are renting it as a long-term, then that I believe that's a relationship between you and your insurance company to get your liability, because you're not entering into an agreement with the city of Charlottetown for your duplex. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it's different because you are somewhat entering into an agreement when you register your garden suite on the registry list, but I know I have a garden suite and it's registered, but my relationship with my insurance is through my insurance company. And not putting you on the spot today, but maybe we can get some more clarity for His Worship and anybody else for that at our next committee meeting. And same goes for an update on Park Street and where we are with the
Joint task force.
joint task force, as well as the development agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
And Madam Chair, the reason I keep bringing it up, because the clock is ticking, whether you look at it in minutes, hours, days. Before you know it, December will be here, which is our first benchmark on a variance, and then the next benchmark is March 22nd of 2025. So we just have to get a handle on where the province is going with it, and I can wait till the next meeting, or they can send a report subsequent to this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Your Worship. Okay, so that was business arising from the minutes. So now we can move on to our reports, and I welcome the extra folks in, from OP and here with us today. And also, I see Doug Dumais is here, our what's your exact title? Arts and Cultural Officer. So welcome to our meeting and everyone else that's here. So I'll turn this over to our manager and for our first update, which will be on the draft official plan. So over to you, Donna. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the purpose of the report today is to provide an update on the draft official plan. And we have with us today, yes, sorry about that. So we have with us today two members of the official plan preparation team, and that's Nick and Paul. And they will be providing a presentation to the committee on where we are and the next steps in terms of finalizing the official plan for the city. So I'll just turn it over to them now.
Thank you, Chair and Committee, for having us this afternoon. Apologies for the slide quality. The PDF is not showing up exactly as nicely as it should, but we'll circulate the formal copy to committee as well at the end of this meeting, so you have that as well if you'd like to share it or distribute it with anyone else. As Donna mentioned, my name is Nick Cool. I'm with O2 Planning and Design, the prime consultant on the OP project. I'm joined today by Paul Deck from Upland Planning and Design Studio based out of Halifax. Today's presentation will be very brief. We'll prioritize having time at the end for questions from committee, but we'll briefly overview the official plan process to date. We'll talk about the engagement that we're undergoing right now with the public, stakeholders, and administration, provide a summary of the major revisions we've made to the official plan since the last time we came to committee and were engaging last year in March, and finally overview the next steps. So in terms of the overall project process, we are nearing the end of the delivery of the official plan. So we've gone through several iterations of drafts, public engagement, review both internally and with council and committee. And at this point in time in the process, we're at what we call final draft engagement. So we engaged on the draft official plan last March of 2023. We've made revisions over the past winter, informed by what we heard from the public, from council, and from internal review as well. And now we're back going out to the public to engage on this finalized document. The next step in the process following this will be official plan adoption in September, fall of this year. In terms of how we created the draft document, there are quite a few inputs that have informed its overall development. We begin with the current official plan. We made sure that we looked through the policies in that document, found the ones that worked, the ones that needed revision, the ones that should be removed, and working with that base, then went out to the public, have engaged on the things that Charlottonians want to see in their city over the future, and also have conducted our own analysis and research. So making documents like the growth strategy and using that to inform the future land use maps of the city as well. We are calling this final draft plan engagement, but it's still important to remember this is still a draft document. So we're going to be finalizing the document that goes to council in September based on the feedback that we hear over the course of this engagement and final reviews. And to this point in time, nothing is set in stone. So this is still a flexible document. The feedback that we're receiving from all parties is considered and will be incorporated as appropriate and as we are able to through this engagement process. In terms of this phase of engagement, there are 6 different streams that we've taken to make sure that we're getting as much feedback as we possibly can. One of these is a presentation to committee today, but we're also engaged in stakeholder discussion sessions based out of the library throughout the time that our consulting team is here this week. There's internal workshops being held with the City of Charlottetown administration, a project website that the public's able to visit and review information. We've also uploaded a redline document version of the official plan that highlights exactly what has changed since we were last here in March. So if people are interested in skimming through and prioritizing just the things that have been altered, that exists online. Included with that bundle of information used to help inform how the documents change, there's also a 2-page summary document that provides at a very high level all the changes that have been made to the document. Lastly, we are running drop-in open house events throughout this week. We had our first one last evening. We have one tonight and 2 tomorrow evening as well. So that way residents are able to come in person and speak with the project team if they so choose to do so. Just to highlight, these are the dates and the locations of those engagements. So again, tonight we're at the library actually until 8:30, and then tomorrow up in Rod Royalty and West Royalty and the library again. Last night we were at the Malcolm Darragh Center. In terms of major revisions to the document, I'll hand it over to Paul. He'll discuss the changes that have happened since March of 2023.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair and Committee. I would like to walk you through the main changes we have applied to the documents since they last went public in March of 2023. In those engagements, we received a lot of feedback. There were also some staffing changes. There's a lot of new employees and departments, and we worked with the city departments in January and February of this year to accommodate feedback directly from the technical teams. And as a result, we have applied the following changes to the documents. Right. So first of all, on the overall vision of the plan, we heard a lot about matters of climate change and heritage. So in the vision statement of the plan, we really emphasize those 2 points to make Charlottetown ready for climate change, to work on climate change adaptation, mitigation, but also to really strengthen the urban design component of urban growth in a heritage context. Further on climate change adaptation, we integrated a lot of additional policies on the land use pieces about corridors and nodes. We have policies that will require, through the zoning bylaw, more plantings of trees along the main street corridors. There will be additional landscaping requirements. Especially for the nodes where most of the urban growth is expected, more green areas for natural managements of stormwater and other climate change effects will be considered. In terms of parkland dedications, we heard a lot of feedback on policies around parks. So we introduced, first of all, policies that will encourage council to expand the ownership of green spaces and park spaces going forward. And also we are introducing a distinction that will be implemented in the zoning bylaw between typical recreational parkland and ecologically sensitive habitats that are important for ecological functions of the city, giving the city an opportunity to also highlight the importance of acquiring some of these lands. On reconciliation, the plan now has a land acknowledgement at the very beginning. We have added that, and we also added more policies that will help the city to coordinate their efforts of collaboration with First Nations on the island. And finally, one major change that occurred, one major new circumstance that occurred over the last 12 months related to this official plan is that the city of Charlottetown entered into an agreement with the federal government on the Housing Accelerator Fund. So for the residential areas that you will see on the next map of the future land use map, there are 2 major changes there occurring. First of all, as per agreement between the city and the federal government, there will be policies in place that no more lots in the city of Charlottetown will be zoned for less than at least 4 units as of right, and that within 800 meters, so meaning within a reasonable walking distance from UPI, the Holland College, and the hospital, up to multi-unit dwellings of up to 4 stories would be permitted as of right. So this is the map. We haven't applied any changes since last year to the future land use map itself. The feedback we have been receiving on, densification of Charlottetown was fairly divided. Most citizens have an opinion on that. Either they're pro more densification or they're a little wary of change and wouldn't like to see a lot of that. So everything considered and the housing situation that the city is in, we still felt that the approach of densifying along the main corridors of the city is appropriate. So we still have that that corridor designation in areas like University Avenue, St. Peter's Road, and at their intersections, designations as node. So the approach here is completely maintained, no changes to the map. So that was the overview of the main changes we have applied and bringing forward now to the public during this round of engagement. Just a brief outlook on the next steps that we are facing after these public events of this week conclude. So first of all, in addition to the events, there are the other engagement measures that my colleague has just mentioned. Once they all wrap up, we will come back to the city with what we heard report on everything that we received as feedback on this latest version of the documents. We will take that final round of feedback to revise and adapt the documents as necessary, and will then bring the documents or the document back to council in the fall of this year. Any questions and comments?
Well, thank you very much for both of you for your report. I'm going to open it up to you folks first. Is there any questions from either His Worship, Councillor Beck, or Councillor McCabe? Open the floor. Go ahead, Councillor Beck.
Oh, there we go. Push the wrong button. I just want to go to the HAF, the Housing Accelerator Fund, just for a minute. And when we originally approved you were talking again about the height as of right around universities and colleges, and also the 4 units as of right. If I recall, when we approved the housing, we were talking about a lot of this was coming in. A lot of that sort of stuff was contingent upon approval and adoption of the official plan. So is that, that will be an element of the final report coming in, but I think that was kind of put forth as under the as appropriate part in terms of looking at the wordage. And, technically possible or as appropriate. So that is still in place. Am I correct?
And for today, just direct all the questions over to the gurus. You don't have to go through me. I mean,
I didn't go through.
I know you didn't. I know you didn't, because you never do, but others do. Yes, but just.
I was
just go
looking
right-
left, not right,
Yeah,
Madam
just-
Chair.
Everyone can just go right to our gurus over here, so thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Beck. Yes, that is a condition, that it will be 4 units as of right, as appropriate citywide. And also that this is not something that is done and dusted, in that we do have to update the zoning and development bylaw to be aligned to this policy direction.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Your Worship.
and I will speak, but I didn't need to, but I did have conversation last night around this, and there will be some flexibility. I know we had talked about different zoning potentials that could come in that would, in our existing communities that are already established, and if someone had a lot, there might be different ways, as you just said, that we would call it like I think someone said an R1C zoned lot, which would then have to still come to council for consideration in those already existing communities. There will still be, I know there's some hesitation to just open it wide open and say it can be anywhere for anyone. I think it still has to suit the community that it lives in, and at some point, there would have to be some flexibility. But that, again, would fall towards zoning and development bylaw, not the official plan, correct? Yeah, thanks.
Go ahead, Your Worship.
Madam Chair, I just want to recognize the Chair. I was at the presentation along with yourself and Councillor McCabe and Councillor Matard, and also Councillor Tweel, and had a great conversation. I love the layout, climate change, and sustainability, reconciliation, all the other big areas of concern that were brought up last spring when you were doing your public consultation. But if I go to half, and that wasn't part of the discussion last year because, I have to give credit to Sue Fraser along with the CAO to keep, they pushed that application, and we ended up with a $10.1 million fund for 3 years. And I know that all of you the group are familiar with the initiatives accessory dwelling unit program. So on the accessory dwelling unit program, right now, presently in Charlottetown, in order to build an accessory dwelling unit or a garden suite, it has to be 0.5 acres and up. So this question I want to ask, I want to get an answer. Will that be gone, completely gone under this one property, 4 units? Is that how we package it?
I think that's a level of detail that will be addressed in the zoning and development bylaw.
So that'll be downstreamed or that'll go to the zoning development bylaw. But in the official plan, we will be addressing density. We are going to talk about density as an issue that has to be looked upon now and into the future. So that will be in the official plan. So that covers us, the city, when we start drilling down into making amendments to the zoning development bylaw. The parking strategy, as I mentioned to you last night, there's a project out on Malpeck Road. And the developer is looking at a big project, but again, parking is something he's going to reduce. Can you give me an example, what kind of wording would you use for that in the official plan? Or would you? Or is that zoning development bylaw changes?
I think if the committee wishes, we could certainly add a policy to the official plan that speaks to specifically integrating the results of this parking study and to consider those in the zoning bylaw.
Yeah. And the reason I bring that up, because that runs parallel with our climate action plan, is that we need to get more citizens, residents out of vehicles and into public transit. And the way to do that is to minimize where you can park, or if you have to find some parking, it'll have to be off-site. So I think, and that will cover the whole city. That just won't be a downtown issue. That will be an uptown issue, like the project I was speaking to you about last night. And then again, one of the initiatives clarified design requirements to promote missing and middle units. So that will again be in the official plan under that whole density focus or vision. I'm just clarifying because I know I'll be asked these questions, or I will be asking them at your meetings upcoming this evening and the next couple of days.
Yeah, just to clarify, I went through all the commitments in the agreement of the Housing Accelerator Fund one by one and made sure that they're all reflected in the official plan. In most cases, I didn't see the need to change anything about the policies. Missing middle, there are lots of options that enable that kind of development in the official plan, even in the previous draft from last year. I've only addressed the items where we felt that some changes to the official plan are needed in order to reflect the application, but otherwise we should be good.
Yeah. And Madam Chair, the reason I bring this up, because the official plan is that big vision, but it has to put the spotlight on some of these issues as in the 6 areas that you identified, or at least 5 other minor changes. I don't know what that means, but that I'm sure means something further to come. Climate change and sustainability. The federal government just recently announced $6 billion more in expanding, densifying communities, and $1 billion will be going to upgrade infrastructure. So infrastructure has to be part of our vision too, because if we're going to make our communities less of a carbon footprint, then we have to ensure that we have infrastructure dollars that come from federal, provincial, and our own coffers as municipalities, whether we do that through taxes or a better share of tax equity from our provincial partners. So again, I'd like to just, if there's something that talks about infrastructure and the need of communities to really tie into that, and that includes our fiber network, because the super internet highway is very much an infrastructure need of every community, because we know what happens when Wi-Fi goes down or when the internet bottoms out. You know, everybody's lost, walking around wondering, what can I do? These are, my concerns that I don't know if they can specifically be addressed, but they just have to touch on it through that prism of, the official plan is about a lot of things, and it has to cover a lot of these areas, because, again, the last time we did this, and it was passed in 1999, when will we get the chance again? Because I participated and attended some of those meetings back in the late 90s. They were pretty boisterous. There was a lot of shouting voices from rooftops from all over, and lots of people were concerned about what's going to happen to my community, just like we're concerned about one property, 4 units in existing residential areas. Like, does that meet the half targets? I don't know. I think HAP was thinking that it's one property, 4 units all over. But we just technically can't see that as feasible, because there's some properties that just wouldn't accommodate 4 properties on one PID number. So just some of the areas I'm concerned about. I'll probably remind you over the next couple of days when I attend your meetings, but I just want to see that reflected in there so that we can just say we got a solid official plan, tight, but it's very flexible to break it down and manifest itself through our zoning and development bylaws. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you for that. I've had a few inquiries from folks in the community. Just a little clarification around our main arteries, corridors into the city. When I think about the main kind of ways into the city, I think of North River Road, I think of University, I think St. Peter's, Kensington, Grafton, Water Street. Are you including all of the ones I just listed? Or, because sometimes when I look at the document, we seem to focus on 4, and I'm just wondering, for the folks that are wondering on that too, what are we thinking when we think about where we're encouraging the densification, like higher density?
Some of these.
It's likely right on the map.
There.
Okay. I think some of these corridors you mentioned would be located in the downtown. So anything that's situated in the downtown is subject to very specific policies. In fact, even the existing official plan, despite its date, has some pretty good policies for those areas. So what's new in this new iteration of the official plan is mostly the focus on corridors outside of the downtown area. So yeah, we're looking at University Avenue, St. Peter's Road, Mount Edward Road, Belvedere Avenue, and yeah, parts of North River Road. Those are the main focus areas.
Kensington
And
Road?
yeah, Kensington. I'm missing one, the one that upstream.
Kensington
is on.
Road?
That's Kensington? Yes, perfect. Right, so Allen Street.
That's an east-west street, yeah, same as Belvedere. East-west.
Oh, yes,
And north-south. So
Right.
University Avenue, Great George Street is a north-south.
Right. We haven't identified Kensington as a corridor because it's partially, one side of it is in the Eastern Gateway plan, and part of it is in the business park or in the so-called Workscapes designation. So Kensington wasn't specifically identified as a corridor. However, I do recall that there is a policy in place in the residential designation that allows for higher density dwellings on Kensington.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, just to, again, back to the Housing Accelerator Fund. You referenced the official plan that's guiding us now. It does address affordable housing, right? Now, again, affordable housing has evolved into private development, NGOs, government, public housing. But, you know, we've gotten away from public, social, subsidized co-op housing. Hopefully, we're able to highlight that, you know, the co-op housing was very active here in Charlottetown back in the 70s. That's how Hillsborough Park was created. That's how co-op housing was created out off North River Road leading down to the co-op ball field or co-op park. So hopefully we broaden that we're just not addressing affordable housing, but those the types of housing that requires public money, public financing, public maintenance, and public operation.
Yeah. The biggest strength of this official plan is its aim to create complete communities. It's really looking at creating all these nodes where amenities for each and every one will be available not only in the downtown but also in other parts of the city. So that's really a focal point. The official plan is mostly a land use planning document, so it doesn't really look in detail of what kind of developers will be acting in that market, right? If those are market sector developers or nonprofits, the rules and the framework that we're putting in place should work equally for everyone to contribute to good complete communities, to add density. I think which of these developers exactly will be acting on the market, there are maybe some supplementary documents that need to detail that further.
Yeah. So I think I pointed out to either Stephanie or Stefan, there is a proposed development out in the Hillsborough Park, which is off St. Peter's Road. It's 82 acres overlooking the Hillsborough River. They're looking at 1,200 to 1,400 units. I also mentioned, now that's a mix of NGO, public money, private money, but I also mentioned the other possible development on Malpeck Road with Skyline Properties. I did send you the renderings of what they're proposing, but that's more market. And it could include non-market if the province of Prince Edward Island was to amend the Planning Act and to provide inclusionary zoning within the province, not as a shall, but as a may. And I think hopefully, that could be something we all touch on. But again, there's lots going on that we can keep developing further down the road, 10 years, 20 years, and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Everything that, all of these documents are on our charlottenhall.ca website for anyone who can't make it to any of these other information sessions as they progress during the week. So I just wanted to make sure, Donna, I was on this morning, it looks like everything's there. Yep.
Yes, Madam Chair, and also to add that anyone who has any questions or comments are free to forward them to the Planning and Heritage Department. No, that survey was completed last time. Yeah.
The results are available online?
They are, and also through the What We Heard report.
And when this is all done, there'll be an update at What We Heard report. Is that correct for our charlottenhall.ca?
There will
website?
be one that will be posted after the completion of this round of stakeholder consultations.
Great. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions at this stage? I mean, there'll be many more opportunities for this committee to seek clarification and ask questions, but anything else for tonight, folks? No? Okay, well, thank you very much, and we'll see you later on down at the library. Okay, thanks. Okay, the next item on the agenda is very exciting for His Worship. We are.
See, our lawyer's here too. That's
Yeah.
good news.
We are going to be getting an update on the Enforcement and Summary Proceedings bylaw, and I'll turn that over to Donna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So today, as you've stated, the purpose of this report is to provide status on the updated version of what we are now calling the Enforcement and Summary Proceedings Bylaw 2024. And Melanie's here to do a presentation to provide a brief summary on the changes that has been made to the Summary Proceedings Bylaw that will be repealed if and when this particular version is approved by council. So I'll just hand it over to Melanie.
Thank you. Thank you, Donna, and thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate I have a presentation in front of you, but I intend to be as informal as possible, so if you have any questions, please feel free to interject as I speak. Just to point out Deputy Mayor's comments regarding your worship and his eagerness to get this together. It's been a long road. As you all know, and as Donna and all staff members of all departments know, bylaw enforcement is a challenge. And it's important for all of you to know that this new bylaw is not a golden ticket to making bylaw enforcement super simple and easy and straightforward. It's still going to be a challenge. We are handcuffed by what is permitted in what's outlined in the Municipal Government Act. So we have done our best to outline that in the new bylaw in a clean and clear process as possible. But it, again, doesn't, it's not reinventing the wheel. So I'm going to go through some of these slides just to highlight the big points of the bylaw. And I understand that the new bylaw was included in your package for review, and you have the old bylaw available to you online, so you can kind of compare the two. We haven't done that for you, but you can see a lot of the obvious changes. And so our office has been working with the city for several months to get this bylaw together. We did consultations with the former CAO, former interim CAO, many of the former department heads, and trying to get a grasp on what is needed by every department so that we can implement that into every bylaw to make it simpler for every staff member to enforce their bylaw. And so some of the highlights that we saw in the issues were consistency across all bylaws, the ticketing and collecting. Those were the big parts that we were missing. And so we've made changes to those, and I will get into a little more detail. But some of the other highlights are additions from the amendments to the Municipal Government Act, which include details regarding bylaw enforcement officers and their qualifications and how they're to be governed by the municipality, and complaints can be lodged against them and appeals can be made by those individuals. The city has hired a bylaw enforcement officer, Elizabeth, and we have had several conversations with her, and she brings a lot of great experience from her former job in Ontario. We have also increased fines. My colleague Jacob Izard met with, I think, every department head to get an idea, not an idea, to get confirmation for fine amounts for the bylaw violations. There are other enforcement remedies aside from just issuing a ticket, so I'll touch on those. And also ways to be able to collect fines. So I'll just skip over that one. And so one of the big challenges or issues, I guess I'll say, that we've run up against in our conversations with many people from the city is the difference between issuing a municipal offense ticket and laying an information. And it's not, I'm going to sit here and explain it, but it's not that straightforward because the processes do look very similar. In section 227 of the MGA, and I don't want to drone out too much about the legal provisions and all of that, but it does outline the specific bylaws that municipality is permitted to issue a municipal offense ticket. And so you can see those in the middle of that slide. Animal control bylaw, dangerous premises, planning and development, pesticide control, the parking of vehicles, etc. And so for all other bylaws that the city has in place or adopts in the future, the ability to issue a municipal offense ticket isn't there. So you lay an information. And so the difference, I guess, between the two of them is when you issue a municipal offense ticket, so let's use the zoning and development bylaw, for example, the bylaw enforcement officer or a peace officer, the police officer, fills out the ticket, specifies the exact section of the bylaw that's being violated and outlines the fine and issues the ticket to the person. That individual has some options. They can, one, plead guilty by paying the fine, or they can, two, plead not guilty, and after that after they have pled not guilty, then the city will work with the court liaison officer that I think is available at the city police department, and they will schedule a hearing at the provincial court in front of Chief Judge Lance. And they are contesting their guilt under the ticket. So guilt isn't, or it is presumed from the beginning, but they have the option to say they're not guilty and try and prove that they aren't guilty. We would then be deemed the prosecutors in that situation. When it comes to laying an information before a justice, that's referred to as a summary offense ticket. So it's more the criminal court process than anything. And so the bylaw enforcement officer or peace officer lays an information. So they lay an information in writing, which looks very similar to the ticket, to the municipal offense ticket, and there is a date and a summons for which that person has to show up and present their case before a judge. And so the end result can be the same. It's just two different paths to get there, depending on if the person pleads guilty or not guilty under the municipal offense ticket.
Madam Chair, Melanie, could I just stop you there on that one? So, right now, the way it is, without this summary, well, we do have a summary conviction, or what is it in our bylaws? I was just looking at it. Summary proceedings bylaw, that's what we have now. That's the comparison you're making, correct?
That's the old bylaw, yes.
Yeah, so.
Or the current bylaw, I
Yeah,
should
so
say.
right now, if I put up a building without a permit, right? The city takes that person to court. Is that right?
So
Right now? Do we give them a ticket?
you give them a ticket. I mean, if someone puts up a building or is in the middle of construction, there's other remedies such as an injunction, a stop work order. So think of someone who their premises is considered a dangerous or hazardly premises under the unsightly premises
unsightly,
bylaw.
dilapidated, dangerous.
Yeah, so use that bylaw, just to think of it for an example. We would do the same process, like what I'm describing of the laying in information and the municipal offense ticket, that is in your current bylaw.
So if I have an unsightly, dilapidated, dangerous property, our bylaw enforcement officer or our police officers could go out and give a ticket.
Give a ticket, yes.
Well, why are we bringing these issues to council? If we just give a ticket and the person doesn't pay the ticket, then we take them to court.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Oh. So currently, the situation is that if someone has an unsightly, dilapidated, dangerous property,
Sure, I know what you're saying. So I don't have that bylaw in front of me, so I'd have to look at what the requirements are in that bylaw
Okay.
for bringing the matter before city council, because I know which resolutions you're speaking of.
they just keep coming up, they give there's an 18-month stay in order, or order to execute, but some of them are coming back, like 75 Dorchester. I think it's been back to us 2 or 3 times.
Sure, and that's an issue specifically with respect to that bylaw, so we can certainly take a look at that. And I've had some conversations with my colleague David and with Elizabeth, the new bylaw enforcement officer, that that bylaw, I think, should be looked at.
Thank you.
And so, once the city has issued a municipal offense ticket or laid in information, there is a fine that needs to be paid. And as all of you know, and as most staff know, it hasn't been the easiest, and it's not easy to collect fines. It's not easy to collect debt generally. So we really looked at the different options available to the city in collecting those fines once we either have a guilty plea from the individual who has violated the bylaw, or if we have a finding of guilt by Chief Judge Lance or the applicable judge at a provincial court hearing. And so one mechanism for that, for example, if we did go ahead and proceed to a trial to seek a guilty plea, is if there is a finding by a provincial court judge of a guilty plea and the individual found guilty does not pay the fine, there is a provision in the Summary Proceedings Act that allows the provincial court, upon the city's request, to issue a certificate of default and register it in the Supreme Court. And when you register a certificate of default in the Supreme Court, you get what's called a minute of judgment, and that is a judgment you can collect on. So you can, depending on the type of work the person does, you can garnish wages, you can register it against any property they own. So if they go to sell, it needs to be paid out to release any encumbrances on the property. So that one we have used in the past, and it's been a helpful mechanism for the city and other municipalities in the province. And then sorry, I keep clicking the wrong button. Another mechanism, and I think all council members and your worship would be aware of, is in section 240 sub 2 of the Municipal Government Act. And when that states that when work is carried out by the city, so think of cleanup on someone's property with respect to grass cutting or garbage, when the city incurs an expense, that creates a lien on the property. And that lien, according to subsection 3, has priority over all other judgments with the exception of the Crown. So that is helpful when they go to sell a property. And other remedies include, obviously, an injunction. That is not through the bylaw, but we have referenced other collection remedies in the bylaw just to make it clear. That remedy is specific to probably the zoning and development bylaw when things happen without permission or without the proper permits from the Planning and Heritage Department. And that's a Supreme Court application. So it's a bit of a different process, but it is available. And there is one other provision in the Municipal Government Act that we are familiarizing ourselves with, and it's Section 162. And it gives the city the authority to refuse to issue a license or authorization when there is an outstanding fine to be collected. So off the top of my head, if you think of individuals who are seeking a short-term rental license, if they have an outstanding fine, the city, we would submit, has the authority to refuse to issue that license until the fine is paid out. We haven't tested that in provincial court or Supreme Court yet, but it's a pretty clear provision, and it's pretty broad in that it gives the city a lot of power to refuse to issue a license or authorization. So that's kind of some of the bigger highlights of the enforcement bylaw. I appreciate that it's a large document, and there may be comments or questions now or in the future, and we're happy to answer those.
I just have a quick one.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we have a lot of questions. Unfortunately, we're pressed for time today. We have about 5 minutes, so we may have to bring this back to a special committee meeting for additional questions. I dare say we won't wait for the month. I dare say we would just schedule a meeting that would be specific to this, hoping that Melanie's schedule would permit as well to come back. But we can open it now for 5 minutes of questioning. Go ahead, Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. And I just, because I'd forget this question, and I do want to really indulge and read more, but it's heavy for people that don't read that language every day. But when you're talking about the city could refuse any license to be applied for, AKA short-term rental, what if they come in to apply for like a building permit and they had an extra? Could that be considered part of what you're talking about?
So that's a question, thank you, Councillor McCabe. That's something we've considered because obviously that's one of the bigger things and more frequent items that the city does issue. I think we'd have to look more into it, and it would definitely come in on a case-by-case basis. So we do have to consider that if the fine is completely unrelated to the zoning and development bylaw, would the city have the authority to refuse to issue something under the zoning and development bylaw when the matter is unrelated? So not to get too bogged down in the considerations, but these are just the things that we're thinking of. So we're definitely alive to that possibility, but I think we'd have to have kind of a situation in front of us before we could give you a specific answer.
Thank you for that. Councillor Back?
Yeah, I have a question. Under 9.1, it was talking about the responsibilities of the bylaw officer, and it's more centered around, I guess, the process for enacting enforcement of our bylaw. And is it all complaint-driven, or can it be initiated by the city? Like it says, responding to, investigating, and keeping a written record. Is it solely on, because what I've heard is that, well, if we don't hear about it, we can't act upon it. But if they're obvious, and we know that there are some obvious violations of some of our municipal bylaws that are out there, can this be not a complaint-driven process? Can it be something where our bylaw officers can be proactively, or if they are aware, does it require a complaint to come in before we act upon it?
Thank you, Councillor Beck. So great question. Bylaw enforcement is typically always complaint-driven, and that, I think, is related more so to the idea of how many people would we need to police the entire city. So it's an administrative and a personnel type of question, but that's certainly, there's no provisions in the bylaw or the Municipal Government Act that would prohibit the city from proactively enforcing their bylaws. I appreciate you were just referring to 9.1C, but if you look at 9.1A, it gives the bylaw enforcement officer the power to enforce the bylaws throughout the city. So why, practically speaking, it certainly is a complaint-driven process. There's nothing that says it has to be that way.
All right. When I was looking at the, thanks for that, Melanie. When I was looking at the ticket itself, I was seeing that there was it was basically saying that there is set fine amount, description of offense, tick off which box it applies to, because these are going to be the most common ones. I'm thinking that these would be the most prevalent ones. When you look through that, there's a whole bunch of bylaws that 99.99% of the people would have no idea that we even have a bylaw about it. So I guess my question is there because we've talked about going back to the helmet thing, where we're looking at the helmet stuff, and we're trying to educate people on the importance of wearing a helmet, that it is a requirement. Is there a warning option on any of these tickets that would be documented as a record-keeping mechanism that on this date, FYI, we saw you, we were trying to educate you, we're trying to work with you, we are making it well-known that we're giving you a warning. I do know that warnings do occur in speeding sometimes, maybe in other jurisdictions. Just wondering if that is something that we could build into this ticket, or is it not possible?
Thank you, Councillor Beck.
Not that I want to start giving warnings out all over the place, but there may be some times where it fits.
I understand. So currently, that type of provision is not in the bylaw or on the ticket. I can certainly take it back, and we can look in the Municipal Government Act to see if there's anything preventing it. I appreciate your comments about traffic and all of that, and that would probably be in the Highway Traffic Act itself. So we can certainly look into it if that's the wish of the committee.
So just two quick points.
Yeah, because I'm going to say it's 4:30.
Yeah, it is, I
And
know.
we
The
have
clock-
resident members.
the bell
and
tolls, yeah.
So I would like to say that we need to propose a time
Yeah.
in the next week or so to continue this conversation.
Yeah.
But we will allow his
Yeah,
worship because
just
it is his
the
bylaw.
Highway Traffic Act, does it cover cyclists, whether it's a traditional bike or a e-bike, to wear a helmet? If not, that should be in here. And as for bylaws, it's not just a bylaw enforcement officer that can enforce the bylaws. We have 67 police officers plus an additional 11. So we have a police force that can also issue those tickets.
Correct.
So we just don't have two bylaw
And if I may
enforcements.
just add one extra point, the traffic bylaw is as a standalone bylaw. So it's governed by the Highway Traffic Act. The traffic bylaw does not fall within the confines of the summary proceedings bylaw.
No. So does the traffic bylaw or the traffic act, Highway Traffic Act, cover cyclists that do not wear helmets? And is there a fine?
I can look.
I'd like to ask if you could. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this conversation is not even a third over. So I would ask for a motion to adjourn. However, I would ask if Donna, you could look at our schedule and Melanie's, so we can continue this sooner as opposed to later. And now if I could just ask for a motion to adjourn. Okay, thank you. And thank you, folks, for your patience. We'll be starting our next minute in about 5 minutes.